Hey, what's going on, everyone? James Nine Numbers here, and welcome back to another episode of the Political Freedom Fighters podcast. And in this episode, I actually do not have a special guest with all of you here today, and that's because I have not been able to find one recently in terms of doing an individual interview. But I originally was not planning on doing an episode this week because of my live stream that happened a couple of days ago. But some things have actually happened during the week, and this is something that I need to share with you all. So, for those of you that don't know, there is a bill that is currently in committee right now in the state house called House Bill 958, which involves some serious election law changes. And let me show you this right here as well, just in case. You know what? Maybe I should just share my screen instead. No, just so that um, oh, hold on a minute. My bad. Hold on. Let me see if I can fix this real quick. Okay, got it. Okay, there we go. That's more like it. As you all can see here, this bill basically shows there are going to be some major serious election law changes involving ballot access, how people gather signatures, how people will vote, and disruption at the voting sites and all that stuff. But the main reason why I wanted to talk to you all about this is because there are a few provisions in this bill that would make it much more difficult for third parties to get on the ballot. And this is something that I have to talk to you about because I actually discovered this from talking to Kevin Hayes from the Constitution Party of North Carolina on Monday evening. And I did read the bill, and there are some things that are pretty alarming. And the Forward Party is also aware about this, as far as I'm aware, as of this video is recording. I will be informing all the other parties about this soon enough, and this is actually quite serious. So, with that being said, let's go over the things that are being in discussion right now. This first one that I really would like to go over is the ban on ranked choice voting. Let's read this together. Section 2.4a. Article 14a of Chapter 163 of the General Statutes is amended by adding a new section to read, ranked choice voting prohibited. No ranked choice voting may be used in any primary or election. The term ranked choice voting refers to a method that allows a voter the option to rank candidates for office in the voters' order of preference. Section 2.4b. This section becomes effective January 1st, 2027 and applies to elections held on or after that date. And the Forward Party actually did a pretty good job with their responses into some of the changes that are bad for third parties. And in fact, you know what? Let me see if I can let's see if I can do this instead. Okay, there we go. So the North Carolina Forward Party has launched a press release into House Bill 958, and I think they did a pretty good job responding to this. And let's first start with their response on ranked choice voting, because let's be real, I do agree with a lot of what the Forward Party says on those issues. And a blanket ban where we strongly disagree. A blanket ban on ranked choice voting. The bill would prohibit ranked choice voting in every North Carolina primary and election. The NCEFP strongly opposes this provision. Ranked choice voting allows voters to express their preferences among multiple candidates without being forced to choose between voting sincerely and voting strategically. It can encourage broader participation, reduce the spoiler effect, create space for independent and emerging party candidates. Like, see this here, this is by far the most important one of it all. And reward candidates capable of earning support beyond a narrow political base. North Carolina does not need to mandate ranked choice voting statewide in order to recognize that an outright prohibition is unnecessary and counterproductive. Local governments should be allowed to consider pilot programs conducted under clear state standards, and lawmakers should evaluate evidence rather than outlawing reform before voters contest it. The proper response to electoral innovation is careful implementation and public evaluation, not a permanent ban. That is so freaking true. Like, oh my god. It's like prohibition. It doesn't really work. You know what I mean? But seriously, this next part we have to go over is actually even more serious than the ban on ranked choice voting. Yeah, that's how bad things have gotten. This next one, prohibit payment per signatures for petitions. Now, obviously, this first part A, it involves like people cannot sign under a different person's name. That one is pretty reasonable, but it's this section right here, section B, that is very concerning. No person may be compensated based on the number of signatures collected for a petition. Any person who willfully violates this section is guilty of a Class 2 misdemeanor. What? This section becomes effective December 1st, 2026 and applies to offenses committed on or after that date. Now, why is that important, you may ask? Well, once again, the North Carolina Forward Party did a good job responding to this as well. So, yeah, let's read this together. Making petition drives harder for new parties and unaffiliated candidates. The bill would prohibit compensating petition circulators based on the number of signatures collected. Standing alone, that may sound like an anti-fraud provision. In practice, however, North Carolina already imposes significant petition requirements on new political parties and unaffiliated candidates. Prohibiting a widely used compensation method without reducing the signature burden or modernizing the petition process would make ballot access more expensive and difficult. Yeah, that's true, especially for the fact that the North Carolina Forward Party, the Constitution Party of North Carolina, and the Veterans Party of North Carolina are already currently petitioning for ballot access as of right now, as we speak. So, wow, that sucks. And you know what's even worse? The Constitution Party is actually currently using this strategy right now, and other parties such as the North Carolina Green Party and the Justice for All Party of North Carolina, and very likely the We the People Party of North Carolina as well, have also used this strategy as well, as because this is the most effective way for people to get for them to collect signatures in order to get on the ballot. Because let's be real, gathering signatures is not easy, and not everyone's going to have the time to do them. And that is not to mention that our state's culture has been unfriendly to third parties throughout most of our state's history. So, yeah, really, our state does not have the culture to be able to say, oh, we can just vote third party, or we can just sign the petitions to elect a third party on the ballot. It's really not that simple. So, anyways, let's continue reading because there's more to it. Election law should not operate as an incumbent protection system for established parties. Any restriction on petition compensation should be paired with broader reforms, such as reducing excessive signature requirements. Yes, we need this. Permitting secure electronic petitioning. That's true. Improving and accelerating signature validation. Yes, that's true. Establishing clear cure procedures. Yes. Creating a practical and affordable path to ballot access. That is very true. Without those accompanying reforms, this provision would undermine political competition. Yeah, keep in mind, this is being passed by the Republican Party. They're supposed to. You need to understand, the Republican Party has become much more slick in terms of ballot access. When it comes to the Democrats, they are pretty blunt about not wanting third parties on the ballot. Republicans tend to be much more slick. They pretend as though, oh, they're pro-third party. And then when they get into power, they undercut it. You can ask the Constitution Party yourselves about it if you wish. And the Libertarians too. So, yeah. Oh yeah, there's also one more thing we do need to go over. And I know there's more to the bill than just those three, but those are the main three that I'm actually concerned about. And it's, well, let me see if I can find it. Okay, there it is. All right, here we go. Eligibility to serve as a candidate in the party primary. Now, this one I actually did not mention about earlier. The Constitution Party did express concern about it, but I accidentally misread it, and I thought it was a good thing. But after reading the Forward Party's article, I was like, oh wow, I read this wrong. Oh yeah, this is a terrible idea. So let's read this together, shall we? No person shall be permitted to file as a candidate in a party primary unless that person has been affiliated with that party for at least 365 days. As you can see, it used to be 90, but yeah. So yeah, I from my opinion, I accidentally misread it as like they would get like as like. I forgot. I'll be honest with you. I forgot how I misread it but I do remember misreading it. So yeah, 365 days as of the date of that person filing such as notice of candidacy. A person registered as unaffiliated shall be ineligible to file as a candidate in a party primary election. Notwithstanding subsection A of this section, a person who has been affiliated with a party for less than 365 days may file as a candidate in that party's primary if the state executive committee of the political party with which the candidate is affiliated grants the person a waiver. Now, here's the thing that confused me. I wasn't sure what they meant by a waiver. Like, it sounds simple, but what does the waiver look like? Is there a requirement as to how the waiver should be? And that's what confused me, like when it came to this section in general. The state executive committee of the political party may, in its sole discretion, grant or deny a waiver request. I'm sorry, I'm losing my breath right now. The waiver must be submitted to the board of. Oh my God! Come on. The waiver must be submitted to the Board of Elections, which has jurisdiction over the ballot item under GS 163-182.4 by the close of the filing period for that office. This section shall not apply to any of the following: candidates selected by party convention or political party caucus, political parties that have been in existence for 2 years or less. This section becomes effective January 1st, 2027, and applies to candidates filing in a party primary on or after that date. So, yeah, I do remember. I actually remember reading this, and I accidentally thought that it helped third parties because of the fact that I thought it gave the parties like more time to register or be on the ballot. Or sorry, I thought it required. I thought it would make it like to where like it required people to allow people to run for office as long as if they were in a party for less days, not more. I think I made a mistake on that, and that is my bad on it. But yeah, this is why sometimes you have to double check, because you never know when you'll make a mistake like I did. But anyways, I'm glad I was able to catch it before uploading this video, so that's pretty awesome. Making petition drives harder for new parties and unaffiliated candidates. The bill would prohibit compensating petition circulators based on the number of signatures collected. No, I already read this part. Okay, this one is what we need to go over. Expanding party insider control over candidates. The bill would increase the required period of party affiliation before a candidate may file in a party primary from 90 days to 365 days, which is a year, while allowing party executive committees to waive the requirement at their discretion. Obviously, Ford opposes this. A one-year affiliation requirement creates an unnecessary barrier to candidacy and makes it more difficult for citizens to respond to changing circumstances, emerging issues, or unexpected vacancies. At the same time, the waiver provision gives party insiders the power to decide selectively who may receive an exception. Election laws should be neutral and predictable. They should not create one rule for ordinary citizens and another rule that party leadership may waive for preferred candidates. Now, obviously, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that is in it, but those are the main three that I am very concerned about. And oh yeah, yesterday morning. Okay, as of this video's recording, it's actually June 17, 2026. Yesterday morning, I actually had watched a committee meeting on YouTube, and that's what I'm going to be showing you for the rest of this video because I was there. That's how yeah, Kevin Hayes sent me the link to all the resources and where the meeting was going to take place, and I did watch it, and yeah, unfortunately, I think that got removed but they actually removed it themselves for whatever reasons. But yeah, I was able to save all this. I was able to record it, and yeah, I'm going to show you all what happened. I will note to you all though that some of the things that I did mention to you earlier, they did not discuss about in the video, so I do apologize. But that's our state government for you. So with that being said, I'm going to show you all the video, and yeah, I'll talk to you in a bit.
Quickly as they can, and then we'll get started. consultants at ARM that are helping us today. Stafford Young is over here. Michael Galloway is at the back over here. David Little right there, and Reggie Sills is over here. Thank you guys for being here to help. We also have a number of house pages with us, and as I call your name, if you would be kind enough to stand up and so we can see who you are. Etta Dizio, sponsored by Representative Lindsay Prather. Vianna Thornville, sponsored by Representative Alan Bonsey. Jack Jones, sponsored by Representative Jeffrey C. McNeely. Terry Murray, sponsored by Representative Celeste Cairns. Sarah Lynn Sanchez Malagon, sponsored by Representative Julia Greenfield. And Court Valentine, sponsored by Representative Shelley Willingham. We're glad to have you guys with us and hope that maybe you'll learn something and enjoy your opportunity to be not only with our committee but here at the legislature. At this point, I'm going to ask Vice Chair Ted Davis if he will assume the chair so that I can present the election law bill. I'll do my chair amendment first. Yeah.
Just a small detail. We have a few extras of the hard copies of the amendment. Do you want to put them in the back?
Sure. Let me have one, bud.
You want to do your amendment first,
Yeah, this one.
present the bill,
Yeah.
and then the rest of the other amendments.
This is amendment 1. Mr. Chair, that is amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you're recognized to present your bill.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to begin by moving forward the adoption or being able to present an amendment that I think has been passed out and then speak to the amendment.
You're recognized to speak to the amendment.
Mr. Chair, I think we might need to get the PCS actually before us.
I apologize. This is a PCS. It was sent out to all the committee members last night, therefore it's properly before the committee.
This amendment has got several items in it, most of which were developed. I'd like to give credit to Representatives Harrison and Rubin for working with me on some of these items. The first page is simply essentially saying instead of just the word suspension or removal, the bottom of the first page on line 27, in the area where we have tried to protect the voting site essentially from disruption and misbehaviors during the process, we've expanded the period that would be covered to allow for the time during which election officials are both setting up before actual voting hours begin and closing down after the polls have actually closed. On the top of the second page, we've tried to expand opportunities for essentially a challenged voter or a voter who's in question that for being removed to have an opportunity to establish that they should not be. We've substituted in the document, we've deleted non-eligible citizens and substituted ineligible voters. And I think beginning on line 18 of page 2, we have outlined the process for dealing with these removals, proposed removals of potential ineligible voters. We've altered the timeline somewhat to try to give local boards more time in between their receipt of information from the state board before they have to finish processing, and to give them more time before the actual canvass begins. So those are some timing changes. And then there's a process on the third page for dealing with an improved, I hope, process for dealing with denial of applications where there is concern that there's a lack of citizenship. Let's see. We've provided in 2 instances that rather than the local board may notify someone who's got an issue with their status, that they may be noticed by phone or email, that they shall be if the board has been given either or both of those, phone number or email address. And we've expanded on the beginning at the bottom of the third page of the amendment and on the fourth page, the acceptable evidence for an overseas voter to be able to submit their ballots or register to vote. I'd be glad to try to respond to questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Any comments or questions by any member of the committee concerning the amendment? Representative Harrison, you're recognized for question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, a question. Thank you. And a motion. If you need a motion for the amendment. I just wanted to thank you, first of all, for working with Representative Rubin and me, because we had a very long list, and there's more I hope that we can agree to. But I did have a question about the UOCAVA, the overseas, expanding the forms of acceptable voter ID. Are you worried at all that you're going to run into a equal protection because we're not providing the same? Because part of the problem was that there were a limited number of IDs that could be accepted. You expanded it, but it's still not the same as the list for other voting. And so, are you worried about potential equal protection challenge?
Representative Blackwell, you're recognized to respond.
I guess maybe why didn't you include all the rest?
I think the thinking was that there may be a justifiable reason that some of the others are less appropriate for somebody who's overseas. For example, we've got a provision that would apply more generally for college IDs. And in this instance, if people are overseas, there is the possibility they could be in an exchange student type program, but they would have a passport. So the thought is that this shouldn't be something that if you're overseas after finishing your education, you can still be using your student ID because it has not yet expired, because the expiration date is determined by the university or college that issues it. And depending on how they do that, it could be still non-expired for some period of time and you're no longer a student. So anyway, that was sort of the thinking.
Thank you.
Excuse me, any other questions or comments by the committee? Representative Dahl, you're recognized for a question.
I had to step out. Are we just on the PCS or have we moved to the bill?
We're on the amendment.
On the amendment. I don't think, did we change the identification for out-of-date DMV or driver's license? I'm thinking about, so in here was, and I can't remember where it is, was 2 years out of date. And I was discussing this with somebody who has an out-of-date license because they're old and don't drive anymore. And to get them to a DMV would be as close to impossible. So my question is there an age limit where we can extend and just let them vote, or do they have to go to, is that, I don't know if that was changed in the amendments. That's what I'm asking.
Representative Blackwell.
I'm not sure that we changed that, but I'll let staff respond to that.
Jessica Salmons, Legislative Analysis. Representative Dahl, that provision is not covered in the amendment by Representative Blackwell.
Any other questions or comments by any member of the committee concerning the amendment? Yes, sir, Representative Rubin. You're recognized.
Just very briefly, I just wanted to say thank you as well for working with us on some of these. I think the due process additions for voters that are removed under the process are really substantial changes, and I'm grateful for them. Thank you.
Anything else concerning the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment passes. Now we're back on the bill as amended.
We're obviously dealing with a 35-page bill. And as Representatives Rubin and Harrison know, there are several areas that I'm continuing to work on. We're anticipating the bill will be on the House floor on Wednesday. So that's not to say we can't ask questions and debate today, but I'm going to try to go quickly, and then, of course, we can go to things that may be of particular interest to members of the committee. Part one, starting on the first page, is simply a provision that was asked for by the state board that clarifies some things with regard to counting of ballots. One of the things that it does, unless I'm getting my provisions run together, is that allowing for the fact that we've got some counties that have quite large turnouts, that we're giving them, instead of the third day, to the fifth day to complete some of these ballot counts. And there's some other particular provisions that relate to that process for counting the ballots. If you go to what I believe is page 7, there is simply a little administrative change about the size of the font on the ballot to make it a little larger and therefore hopefully more legible. Then there's a provision, you may remember, that in the amendment we added suspended or removed instead of just suspended, and that language has been substituted in the provisions here dealing with suspensions and removals on page 8 largely. Page 9 has a provision that adds new specifics for minimum training for precinct officials. We have at the bottom, starting at the bottom of that page, we've expanded the effort to deal with disorderly conduct. That's the section where we talked about the amendment that would include setting up for the election period and closing after the polls are closed. There's also a provision starting at the bottom of page 10 for verifying new registrations. Basically what it does is it says you'll continue the process that we've used before of sending out letters to people at the address that they use to register, but that you will do it in a more timely fashion. In other words, first, if you're registering for the first time, within 2 business days after you finish processing the application. And on the envelope that goes out, we'll have a new item printed that allows somebody who might be receiving that ballot addressed to someone who doesn't live at the address, that they can mark it saying this person doesn't live at this address, and then return it. If they don't get anything back after, I forget how long we wait, but after a period of time, they send a second notice out within 1 business day after non-receipt, same label on the outside of the envelope, and then if there's still no response, there's the procedure for removing that registration or not completing it. There's a provision on page 10 in the middle that some of you will not like, that says we won't use ranked choice voting in North Carolina. There is a provision on page 11 that's new, starting on line 9, that basically says with respect to early voting machines, that those have to be closed down at the end of early voting period so as to make them not subject to being used to alter anything that's in there, that we lock them down. We don't take the count, but that they are basically rendered unable to receive additional votes. There's a provision also on 11 with respect to appointment of observers in nonpartisan elections to allow a nonpartisan candidate to designate some observers. There are provisions beginning on page 12 that relate to list maintenance, and it basically is attempting to set up a procedure in which the state board regularly, once it receives information suggesting that somebody has died or is not an eligible voter, that they regularly provide those lists to the county boards, and the county boards are required to take those people off or to otherwise process them in accordance with the notice from the state board, and the state board confirms that the county boards do in fact follow through on that directive. That same provision at the top of page 13 contains language particularly dealing with death records. Starting towards the bottom of page 13 and continuing over, there's some revisions relating to possible non-eligible citizens appearing on the state's voter registration records that could be information gleaned from a federal database, and how those would be dealt with. There's procedures on page that continue on page 14 dealing with that. There's one provision here that says, line 20, that if a voter votes early and they die before election day, that their ballot or vote can be removed. I don't know that this applies to Representative Dahl's question. I don't think it does, because I think hers was age-related. But this would provide a temporary moratorium on expiration of certain Class C driver's license to photo ID presented for voting. That's on page 16, beginning on line 35. See if I can keep myself from getting lost here. Basically, on page 17, there is a provision that if a person, for example, at DMV, is taking an application from somebody to register to vote, and that person refuses to say or indicates they are not a citizen, that they don't continue to register them, notwithstanding their having refused to answer the question or having acknowledged that they're not a citizen. There's a new item that begins at the bottom of page 17, post-election audits by state auditor. This basically is an effort to give the auditor, not the state board itself, an opportunity to go into the counties after the election is complete, and the provision makes clear that it's not going to affect the outcome of the election. It's really more of an evaluation or an assessment of how well the process works and where we can make improvements There are provisions for the auditor to notify the state board of his findings, for them to notify where it's appropriate the county commissioners who provide for paying and employing the county board of elections, so that they can deal with any issues that might develop in the process of that audit. Page 19 moves some municipal elections to essentially try to avoid as many different occasions on which local boards have to come up with precinct workers and so forth, so that we can combine some of these things so that they work together instead of being separate. It's probably an efficiency consideration as much as anything. It may be helpful also with voters having a better understanding of when elections are, if we don't have various dates that vary, maybe based on other factors. At the bottom of page 19, there is a change. Currently, law says, I believe, that you have to have been affiliated with the party for 90 days in order to file a notice of candidacy. This basically changes that to 365 days. Subsection B is new in that area, and it provides that if someone has not been registered for 365 days with the party, that the state executive committee of the political party with which that candidate chooses to affiliate can grant a waiver, and the waiver has to be submitted to the Board of Elections that has jurisdiction. It doesn't apply to candidates selected by party convention, political party caucus, and it applies to parties that have been in existence. It doesn't apply to parties that have been in existence for 2 years or less. At the bottom of page 20, there is a provision for basically curing a deficiency relating to lack of signature on a provisional ballot, to provide a means of doing that. And one of the amendments that was contained in the one we approved, as suggested by Representatives Rubin and Harrison, was to change the word may that is in the original PCS that we started with today, from may to shall notify these folks if we have their email and or phone. There's a similar change in on line 5, top of page 21. There are some provisions that start on page 21 and continue over to top of page 23. Continue on to, well, actually, I guess they're all contained, what I'm about to talk about, on page 21. This is an area that we may continue to work on somewhat to try to see if we can get closer to agreement. I don't know that we'll get all the way there. The concept here is we want the State Board of Elections, I suggest, to be the specialist in the elections being conducted efficiently and accurately. It's the process that they're in charge of. And for them to be engaged in turnout the vote efforts runs the risk that somebody feels that the board in charge at the time is targeting constituencies that are favorable to it. So the idea here is we let our separate parties and candidates be responsible for trying to gin up the turnout, which is not a bad thing, but that we say the state board doesn't get involved in the turnout process. But as I say, we maybe are going to look at some further revisions to this section to try to be sure that we don't step on the legitimate rights of individuals, especially maybe at local boards, to have freedom of speech, as it were, and try to draw a successful line between what they're doing in their official capacity and as a board and what they maybe choose to do as a citizen. Page 22, there's a provision there for the state board to be able to employ counsel and private counsel and not get permission from the Attorney General. This is a section that I'm continuing to, I hope, talk with folks about. I think the idea here is that we're not trying to avoid public disclosure of what's being paid or maybe who people are, but we want to protect sort of a traditional confidentiality between the client and their attorney, at least until whatever litigation or potential litigation is resolved, so that you're not disclosing one side's strategy to the other side because you're calling it a public record. So you might anticipate possible revision in some of that language. We've also broadened the ability for those who are seeking to challenge something by the state board to bring an action not just in Wake County, but in the Superior Court in which the person seeking a review resides. We've provided at the bottom of 22 to increase from $25 to $100 per meeting compensation to members of the county boards of election. We deleted some language that was previously included that was, I think, a mistake that we did it that way, that deals with exempt positions at the state board. We're not adding anything in terms of any additional, not the original provision some of you may have seen for 25 employees. What we're doing instead is making clear that of the 7 exempt positions that were previously named, that the state board can have flexibility and doesn't have to limit those. It can, in other words, it says administrative officer 3. Well, they can change that to administrative officer 2, I guess. But they could have flexibility as to which 7 they choose to designate there. As has already been noted with the amendment, we made some revisions in the UOCAVA, that's the overseas voters. There's some of them may be military, some may be military dependents, some of them may be overseas and non-military. One of the primary changes, I think, staff correct me if I get this wrong, is that for a overseas voter, would-be voter, who's never lived in North Carolina, that they would not be eligible to vote. They would have to establish some sort of connection to the state and their processes for what they can submit and how we handle that. And there's also a provision for curing a deficiency if they send something in and it's missing a signature or failed to include something that's needed. There's a period of time for them to cure that and a process for doing it. At the top of page 27, currently candidates for local offices can avoid getting into campaign finance reporting and all that that entails if they essentially agree that they're not going to accept and they don't receive more than $1,000. This basically bumps that up to $3,000. Following that, in the bottom half of page 27 is a provision on reporting of contributions and independent expenditures that changes it from $100 to $1,000. On 28, there's a new provision that there would be included on these reports a certification by the filer that it is not knowingly or willfully accepted funds in excess of $10,000 from one or more foreign nationals within the 4-year period immediately preceding the date of that filing. Middle of the page 28, currently you're required to file a 48-hour report after the filing of your last campaign report before an election. if you receive $1,000 or more. This simply changes that threshold to $2,000. And in addition, adds a provision that in a primary, if you have no opponent and your name is not even on the ballot, that you don't have to file 48-hour reports at all for that primary election. There's a provision at the bottom that's somewhat similar, related to a referendum committee and raising the reporting requirement from 1,000 to 2,000. Page 29 is a new section that starts on line 8 that essentially defines foreign national and includes provisions relating to they're not making contributions unless there's an exception or for them that's provided here. Basically, the rest of the PCS until you get to page 33, line 36, the rest of those provisions in there are dealing with this foreign national concept. But beginning on page 33, line 36, there's an exemption for political party committees from campaign sales reporting requirements, that if you're selling some merchandise, then if you come within these description here, then you don't have to include it as though it were a contribution. And then on page 34, part 6, the state board is directed to study and report on the possibility of adopting a signature verification pilot program and to report its findings and any recommendations or proposed legislation to joint legislative elections oversight before May 1st or by May 1st of next year. Page 35 concludes with saying that the School of Government at UNC, Chapel Hill, will work jointly with the state board to develop a uniform curriculum for trainings. Glad to answer any questions if I can.
Thank you for that presentation. Before we go into committee members, I'd like to recognize our State Board of Elections Director, Sam Hayes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the job that you do. Sorry for my voice. Now I'll take questions or comments from the committee. Representative Harrison, you are representative for a question?
A couple of quick questions, please.
Couple of questions.
Thank you. I recognize that we've got a lot of people who drove in to speak, and I'd rather they speak. But I did want to raise a couple of points and ask a couple of quick questions, and I appreciate Representative Blackwell's efforts to fix some of what we see as big problems with the bill. I think my overall concern is how this is going to affect voters and the potential for voters getting kicked off rolls. And I hope we can continue to fix the issues in the bill that are going to affect them, because some of these changes, I think, are particularly necessary and might be quite harmful. I wanted to raise an issue that we had talked about the potential for choosing a venue. Right now, challenges go to the Wake County for election challenges, and this allows any venue. And I just want to point out that we've got pretty powerful national parties, Republicans and Democrats. You could get Mark Elias coming down here and picking the best venue, and vice versa. And whoever's in charge here changes a lot. So we might want to rethink that venue, because venue shopping has been a problem, and I don't know if that's what we want to trigger here. I worry about the never voters never being able to vote now. A kid who grows up with his parents and who are in foreign service or military are now not going to be able to vote. I'm worried about I'm glad we're going to continue to work on the gag rule, because I think that an individual on the board could post the early voting site and schedule, and that could come under this preemption or this prescription. So I'm glad we're going to continue to work on that. I wanted to, ranked choice. I don't know why we're eliminating it. It works in other states. I think we ought to leave the option there, but down the road, we'll fix that. I wanted to ask you about Section 210. I wanted to raise concerns about that. It's, let's see what page it's on. It's the new rules that, I guess, expand challenges for voters. And as I understand it, there are, it's related to ballot challenges. The state board already looks for double voters, people who died close to the election, people who got felony convictions close to the time of election. And I'm just wondering why we're adding this provision. What does it make the state board do that it doesn't already do? Because it already does that. And it does seem like what's going to happen is you're going to have eligible ballots that get tossed. And if there's an issue with registration or ineligibility, it seems like that should be raised when they register at the state board, at their county boards of elections, rather than telling them after they voted, then all of a sudden their vote gets kicked out. So I'm just wondering if that's something we can look at, because I think if there's a chance for a voter to cure their ballot in a timely fashion, I feel like we ought to accommodate that, because voting is sacred and it's a right. So I'm concerned about that, and I'm wondering. We've got this federal data matching, like the federal SAVE system. We know that there are lots of problems with that. So I'm worried about those voters who are going to get kicked off. And
Do you want to respond to this, Fargo?
And
Say that, and then I'll.
last point, a promise, is that you're changing the time frame for challenging voters from election day to 5 business days. And we've got a lot of local elections that might be decided, or even state legislative elections that can be decided with less than 50 votes. And it just seems like there's an incentive to go out and hunt down when maybe there's nothing there. And, we just saw that happening with Griffin. So I'd just be happy to raise those points. Maybe the ballot piece, it would be good to know, because we've expanded it, but they're already supposed to do it, but it's putting in a statute now. Sorry about that. Thank you, though.
Representative Blackwell.
We only have 50 minutes in here, so I apologize, and I'm not going to remember each of the points that you raised. Let me start by saying you and I, at least in general, in concept, are on the same page. We want voting to work efficiently and with integrity, and that means that everybody entitled to vote should be able to vote. Some of the issues relate to, okay, what's the best way and how much time does it take to identify voters who may be voting, or individuals that may be voting who should not. So some of the changes in the timelines are designed to give adequate time to look at that. And you're right, some elections are close. And rather than saying, well, we don't want to find out if some of that closeness was the result of people voting who shouldn't, we just want to have it over and let the chips fall where they may. What we're trying to do here is to thread the needle in giving adequate time for anybody on either side of the aisle, or independents or whomever, to identify somebody who shouldn't be voting, and that everybody has an equal shot at that, and that if they were entitled to vote, the vote counts. Nobody should object to a process that simply results in the removal of a vote that should not have been cast. And if that changes an outcome, that's probably appropriate. But certainly, we're not trying to put up obstacles so much as to do what we can to improve, where we can, integrity of the voting process. And so I've been very agreeable with you guys in trying to add some due process connections if somebody gets challenged, so that it's just not automatic and they don't have a way of trying to correct the record.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Does that answer your questions?
Well, it's enough. There's only 10 minutes.
Okay. Representative Wansley, you're recognized.
I had a point of order. Are you going to ignore it?
Who is speaking?
Now, Representative Dalton.
You have a point of order? What's your point of order?
That this bill does changes so much that limiting it to a 50-minute discussion is almost snubbing the people's voice. We need more time to ask questions and discuss this.
Well, your point's well taken, but we're going to go ahead and continue. Representative Wansley, you're recognized.
Can I respond?
You can respond.
I would say, Representative Dahl, that we considered a very similar, lots of the same provisions. Maybe there's been some tweaking a year ago in the long session. So this is not new stuff, really. And we have sent the PCSs out as quickly as we could. So there may be some things that haven't been seen before, but I'm not sure that the process is much different, and that we have tried to be very open with people about it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, not a question, comment.
Yes, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you. So, Section 2.8B of this bill would make a change to allow the Board of Elections to have access to the full Social Security numbers of every voter. Got serious concerns about the security, cybersecurity around that, and if voters can have confidence that their numbers will not be compromised. Thank you.
Representative Blackwell.
I'm going to let staff confirm this, but I don't think we had a provision in earlier, maybe last year, about the full Social Security number, but I think we now got just 4 that we're dealing with, or whatever DMV sends over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also going to be quick because I really want to hear from the public, but I want to pick up right where Representative Harrison left off. It's actually a shame that we don't have more time, because I think that there is the possibility of agreement on some of these concepts. And the concern about the post-election challenges is that people really want to win elections, and they are willing to be as strategic as they can to do it. And so the challenges aren't going to be earnest, like, I think these 20 people didn't vote. It's, I need to get 50 votes, so I need to challenge 100 people, and I'm going to find 100. And then the other side's going to say, well, he's going to challenge 100. I got to challenge 100, because what happens if some of my voters get kicked out? And it doesn't get litigated in a kind of like, we're trying to figure out who. It's a matter of each side's trying to get votes. That's human nature. I don't think there's any way to stop it, but we're creating a process that enables it. And I think I think we could fix that. Like, I think if we had more time, and that would be my one. I am incredibly grateful to you, Chair Blackwell, for working with us this weekend. This is a bill that we should have a draft 3 weeks out in advance, 2 weeks to debate the changes and tweaks among members, a week for public to have notice of the final version of the bill, and then a 2-hour or a 3-hour committee hearing with at least an hour set aside for public comment. That is the way that we ought to do this. And I actually genuinely believe that despite how contentious this is, if we did that, we'd actually be able to come to an agreement on some of the stuff that we're just not aligned on. And I'm going to walk through them incredibly quickly. The auditor being able to select counties to audit personally. The auditor is a partisan elected office. He is a partisan actor. He campaigns for candidates. And so he can now say after an election, my candidate didn't do well in this district, or he could say, I personally didn't do well in this county. And he could pick that county for an audit afterwards. And I know the statute says it won't affect the outcome of the election, but going into a county afterwards as a member of the like group running for office and grabbing their ballot boxes is going to send a message. And but again, we could fix that if we talked about how to do post-election audits. We want to make sure we're doing this right. No one disputes that we should do this right and we should be continually improving. But having the auditor have this unilateral authority as a partisan actor who campaigns for candidates is just something that we should not be doing. The same thing, there's provisions in the residency documentation for UOCAVA voters, overseas voters. The list of documents they have to provide. I know if I lived overseas for 10 years and I just had to prove I lived here at some point, I wouldn't be able to meet it. Because does anyone have an electric bill from 10 or 15 years ago? If you were a kid when you moved, you wouldn't have that at all. But you were still a U.S. citizen who lived here and you're entitled to vote. And so my fear is part of this bill is correcting things that happened the last time we rushed an elections bill through. And now here we are rushing another elections bill through. And if we could just have more time, I genuinely think that there's more room for agreement than most people might realize. And I would love at some point to have the opportunity to do that. Even the progress we made this weekend even makes me think that more, because I think that the work this weekend was very, very good and I just want more time. Thank you.
It's never been a very satisfactory response to me when people stand up here and say this is a work in progress and we got to go to the Senate, but that's true. And we're going to the floor, I think, on Wednesday. I'm continuing to work with you. I will. And we may well have some House floor amendments. I anticipate that we will. And Lord knows what will happen on the Senate side. And we will have a good bit of time between here and there if they even take it up. So I think what we need to do is to agree to continue to work as we move forward, and hopefully we can get close to the point you would like.
Are there any other questions or comments by any committee member? And let me say at this point, we have to be out of here at 10 till. So I intend to call the question in about a couple of minutes. Did you want to speak, Representative Baker?
I will defer to allow some public comments.
I'm not going to have time for public comment. Are there any other committee members
Okay, then
that
I'll
want to
ask my
speak?
question.
Then you're recognized for a question.
I reclaim my time. I wanted to know, according to your party's belief that this bill addresses perceived integrity issues, what is the largest integrity problem that this bill solves?
Representative Blackman.
In going over the bill, I think there are multiple areas. It's everything from training correctly elections officials, being sure that DMV doesn't register people who tell them that they're not citizens, being sure that we've got a workable process for challenging voters, which gives them due process, but also assures voters generally that the process is going to work efficiently, which makes use of databases that become available that may not have been available in the past. You may remember the report in the press. I can't remember the exact number, but I think there was a report that was available from the federal government that there are about 34,000 people on the North Carolina voter rolls who had died in other states. And we didn't know that until we got the database. Those people's presence opens up avenues for people who are not, shall we say, well-intentioned to try to abuse the system. So there are multiple things. That's why this is a 35-page bill.
I'll now call the question. Do I hear a motion that the PCS for House Bill 958 as amended be rolled into a new PCS favorable to the new PCS unfavorable to the original PCS with a referral to the Rules Committee?
May we call for division?
You so moved?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
So
I call for
moved.
the yeas and nays.
I'm afraid it's a little late. Do you want to do your motion?
Yes, sir. I move for a favorable report for the PCS for House Bill 958 as amended, rolled into a new PCS with a referral to rolls unfavorable to the original bill.
All right.
Mr. Chair, point of order. I called for the yeas and nays before the question was put, before it was seconded. I've called for the yeas
Is
and
your
nays.
motion supported? Do you have the support for your
There's
motion?
a second right there.
Would like people stand up, they would like to have the ayes and the noes?
We don't need that for this. We would need that for a division.
Sir, I
Any
know what
member.
the rules are. That's what I'm going to do. All right, I'll rule that it was supported, therefore we'll do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Almond? Yes. Representative Almond votes yes. Representative Baker?
No.
Representative Baker votes no. Representative Ball?
No.
Representative Ball votes no. Representative Belk?
No.
Representative Belk votes no. Representative Boincy?
No.
Representative Boincy votes no. Representative Cotham?
Yes.
Representative Cotham votes yes. Representative Dahl?
No.
Representative Dahl votes no. Representative Davis?
Yes.
Representative Davis votes yes. Representative Dixon? Representative Dixon? Representative Harrison?
No.
Representative Harrison votes no. Representative Rydell? Representative Rydell votes aye. Representative Rubin?
No.
Representative Rubin votes no. Representative Carson Smith?
Aye.
Representative Carson Smith votes aye. Representative Ward?
Aye.
Representative Ward votes aye. Representative Warren? Aye. Representative Warren votes aye. Representative Willingham? Aye. Representative Willingham votes aye. Representative Zenger? Aye. Representative Zenger votes aye. Representative Stevens? Representative Stevens? Representative Setzer?
Aye.
Representative Setzer votes aye. Representative Reeves?
No.
Representative Reeves votes no. Representative Tyson?
Yes.
Representative Tyson votes yes. Representative Blackwell?
Aye.
Representative Blackwell votes aye.
I've got 12 to 8.
After you announce it, let me take the chair back over and I want to make a committee announcement.
12 members voting in favor, opposed to 8 members voting in opposition. The bill will receive a favorable report. The ayes have it. Representative Blackwell, you recognized.
Because we didn't have time today for public comment, I want to make just a couple of observations. One is we did open a portal on the committee website for public comment, and I think the staff is going to make that those responses or comments available to all the members of the committee. I've also asked the staff, especially since we didn't get to public comment today, to reopen the portal for additional public comment, and that can happen about when?
And let us get worked out on the opening time. Would you like to stop that tomorrow when the House convenes?
Sure. We'll get it open as quickly as they can. Not, okay. You want to adjourn? Okay. That's all the business to come before the committee. Thank you for your attention, and we are adjourned.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, basically, this is going to be a fight that's going to be going on for a while. And right now, it's currently at committee as far as I'm aware. So we are going to have, so there is still going to be a lot of discussion about this in the upcoming months. And yeah, we are going to have to stand against House Bill 958 until we can get at least those things changed. And yeah, there's a lot that's going on, but you know, we are going to have to fight this. This is something that I cannot ignore, and this is something that we cannot ignore either, because this is going to affect all third-party and independent candidates and voters in the state of North Carolina. And that's part of the reason why I made this podcast in the first place, because I do not want to support Democrat or Republican. I just cannot, in good conscience, do that. So, with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all later. Peace.